Have you ever felt deeply exhausted, even though you haven't moved from your chair all day? Your body has been stationary, your heart rate is calm, and yet your emotional capacity is entirely spent. We tend to measure our energy by our physical output, miles run or tasks completed. This focus on the body leaves us confused when we feel paralyzed by a fatigue that sleep doesn't seem to touch. While we often use the words interchangeably, burnout is distinct from standard temporary stress. Stress hits in sharp, manageable spikes that return to a baseline of 0. Burnout, however, is an unbroken upward curve, a slow accumulation of weight that never drops. Standard relief tactics fail here because they only blunt temporary spikes, leaving the rising baseline untouched. Attempting to solve long-term accumulation with short-term stress management ensures that the underlying burden will only continue to deepen. To understand that accumulation, we have to look at the invisible psychological burdens that siphon your mental capacity every day. These drains usually fall into 4 categories: constant pressure, chronic overthinking, people-pleasing, and emotional suppression. Suppression is particularly taxing. Holding your feelings back is an active behavior that requires a massive, continuous mental effort. This diagram shows the result: a steady drain on your internal reservoir, even when your physical activity is 0. Applying that internal pressure for months or years eventually bankrupts your brain's baseline energy reserves. The brain is a high-energy organ, and the work of regulating intense internal tension is a biological process. Constant emotional regulation consumes your internal resources just as reliably as manual labor. When your mind reaches the limit of those resources, the invisible drain begins to manifest in obvious, painful ways. Motivation disappears. Irritability increases, and eventually you may experience a profound sense of emotional numbness. This numbness is a form of dissociation. When the nervous system detects an unmanageable emotional surge, it trips an internal circuit breaker to prevent a total system failure. By severing that connection, the brain physically prevents itself from processing further damage or accepting any new emotional input. This protective emptiness is a successful biological safeguard deployed by an overloaded system to ensure survival. Even when these protective alarms are ringing, our first instinct is usually to ignore them. Society celebrates physical endurance and the ability to push through, yet we rarely value the skill of recognizing emotional limits. We continue to perform and meet expectations until the mind bypasses our conscious intentions and initiates a unilateral shutdown. If you do not choose a point to pause, your biology will eventually choose one for you. Recovery starts with a single distinction: separating what you are doing from what you are carrying. Severe burnout is rarely tied to the number of tasks on your to-do list. You can have a completely empty daily schedule and still feel crushed by the weight of unexpressed feelings. Your exhaustion is a structural reality. It is the natural result of holding up an emotional burden for too long without support. In the context of burnout, rest means more than just sleep. It requires a state of psychological peace and the removal of the need to perform. Emotional recovery is a functional biological requirement. It is the necessary process of returning a strained system to a state of health. That deep, lingering fatigue you have been feeling is simply your mind's long-term plea for peace and stillness. Listening to that plea is the first step toward recovery. Subscribe for more insights into the psychology of mental health.